Welcome to the Level Up Artist Podcast. We're your hosts, Adriana M.A. and
Jackie Sanders. We are two art professionals sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our creative journeys.
We talk to artists, leaders, and art professionals to demystify the creative process and discover new ways to succeed as a career-minded artist.
If you find value in these conversations, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you'll be notified if we launch a new episode every Tuesday. On today's episode, I am super excited because it is the holiday season. Well, not really, but it's celebrating Christmas in July, aka how we can prep now, yes, in the middle of summer for the holiday season ahead.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where it's like, depending how your creative practice works, you kind of get, it goes from kind of slow at the beginning of the year and then starts ramping up. And then there's like in the summer, a lot of times there's vacations and then things start picking up towards the fall. And then before you know it, boom, it's holidays and you're like, oh, fill in the blank. I don't have enough inventory for whatever it is. So there's that push and pull that happens of like holidays should be a time for relaxing or celebrating with your friends and family. But at the same time, as a small business owner, you also have some of that pressure of, I need to come up with a plan. The farther in advance, the better. And of course, that's kind of what we want to talk about of, can I have enough stuff done in enough time, especially for all the different events that you may have committed to as well. So let's dive in. It's a lot.
Yeah, because I know so many artists that we are friends with or that we talk to during the holiday season, whether in the middle of the season or right after, talking about the stress of it, right? Like it's kind of that roller coaster of the excitement of the holidays, making sales, hopefully, but also potential burnout time for a lot of people. And it is that push and pull of the pressure. Or if you choose not to sell work during that time, or maybe sales aren't as good as you planned, having guilt because of that, or feeling like I'm not doing enough, and having all of that in your mind during the holiday season, nobody wants that. So the goal that we always set and that we're going to talk about today is planning ahead so that you don't have to stress during the holiday season. You can just focus on executing your plan and focus on it being profitable and enjoying your entire holiday season, which may sound like a dream land right now if you're a creative that has been through the holiday season, but we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, some of the topics we want to cover today will include your mindset around the holidays, what kind of timelines you got to think about, also planning your artwork and how you're going to be rotating or moving around that inventory.
Yeah, so starting with mindset is always the key with any creative endeavor, right? So acting as if it is already the holiday season. So whether you're listening to this in real time or even a few weeks after the fact, act as if right now is the holiday season. And think about maybe last year, if you had pursued markets or making sales during the holiday season, how did it go? Did you push for sales? How did that feel? Did you get stressed by any part of your process? And really reflect on what went good, what could have done better. Where did you feel maybe guilty in your time during the holidays? Or where do you wish you had pushed a little bit further? Write all of those things down. And that essentially then becomes your blueprint for how you want to tackle this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those things too. It's like, you're going to have to decide if you do want to make a big sales push around the holidays. It's better to decide on that now, so that you can then determine, okay, based on whether you want to or not, what does that to-do list or timeline look like? And it'll help you better plan ahead rather than being reactionary when you start seeing other artists' holiday posts pop up in their sales. And you're like, wait, we're there already? Oh, shoot, I don't have enough time to order XYZ, or I wanted to make ornaments, but I don't have time because I have these other holiday seasons or these other events and things of that nature. So it's one of those things where it's like, the way I see it for planning for July, you get to decide. Sometimes the decision is, I'm not going to do it. Like I'm going to follow, let's say you're one of those artists that has like a semi-regular selling schedule or collection release schedule. You may tie one in to around the holidays, but not necessarily be just because of the holidays. It's more like, no, this is the normal cadence that I do it. And that's when you start thinking about like, what does that timeline look like? Giving yourself that view. So that's why we're doing this in July, or thinking about it in July, is you want to give yourself the time to say, okay, I have so many months left. Do I have time? Do I have time to put all this stuff together? Especially since some of the applications are open right now around this time or closing around this time, you have time to plan that out a little bit.
Exactly. And to your point, if you feel like you don't want to make a big push during the holidays, whether your specific audience may not respond to that, whether you've done it in the past and you're like, I've been burned so many times from burnout and it's just not worth it for me. Of course, preparation can help, but choosing not to have a huge push for sales during the holiday season is one of those things where it's one decision that makes all the decisions easier. And I think as a business owner, that can be a very empowering feeling to say, you know what, I am strategically choosing not to prioritize that this year, which is very different than, as you mentioned, Adriana, seeing someone's holiday post in late October and being like, oh crap, now I have to think of something by tomorrow that I'm going to start offering and all these marketing materials I have to make and photo shoots and products and inventory and then maybe the sales aren't what you thought they were. And you're like, why did I even do that? So making that one choice early on. But if you do decide to make a push, also figuring out what those products are going to be now. And that is one thing, as a little plug for our artist community that we talk about, is we are in that conversation right now on our weekly live calls, talking about how are we preparing now for the holidays, figuring out what products you're going to be offering, ordering samples of those pieces, figuring out how many design iterations, how many original paintings do you want to have, what price points, and then reverse engineering those. So pretty much by the start of Q4, you're already done. You're just executing the plan and you can be stress-free, because that's the biggest thing of figuring out original art versus art products. We discussed this in different episodes of the podcast, but original pieces being one-of-a-kind pieces of art that are typically a higher price point versus products that are reproducible, typically a lower price point, that often sell well during the holiday times, because a lot of the time people want to show up to an art market or shop online to support a local artist. And they want to say, hey, I want to buy 10 of these and just give them to all my girlfriends at the holiday party and call it a day. Which of course would be wonderful if they bought 10 original paintings, don't get me wrong, but sometimes the art product is a bit easier. So the goal is to plan now on what you want to commit to for the holiday season.
Yeah, absolutely. And rolling back to another thing that just came up is take this opportunity to talk to your family and your loved ones and try to figure out, does your family have a vacation that's usually planned around this time? Especially if you have little ones, like how does your traveling, family time, like other commitments fit in? Because that could help determine, like, let's say you've been waiting to, I don't know, travel overseas for the last few years, and finally your family like set on a date and it's in the smack middle of the holiday season. Is this the year that then you kind of scale back what those commitments for markets and things like that look like in order to fulfill your other commitments? Or are you just going to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to Italy with you all because I have 3 markets back to back? Like I feel like this is the time, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. This is also the time when you have to have those conversations. It can be hard because a lot of times, especially if there's a lot of family members involved, to figure out the exact dates. Also, even if you're putting the applications in now, it doesn't mean you're going to get or hear back anytime soon, whether you've been accepted or not. But it is good to at least have that conversation. And I mean, even set time aside in your own calendar of days that you're like, this is going to be really heavy and I'm going to schedule times like days off for myself, because if I don't, I'm going to work weeks on end and then I'm going to feel the burn like come January. So anyways,
Yeah.
figured I would mention that as we're talking about the inventory, it isn't just about making the stuff. You also have to figure out the other side of it, the non-business side, the personal side of it. Like, how does it fit in? And do you need to scale back if necessary? But there's definitely a lot of things to consider when choosing, the holiday pieces themselves that you want to offer, which we're going to talk about next. But first, let's put in a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by our Level Up Artists podcast supporters.
If you have gotten value out of listening to our podcast, please consider becoming a supporter for $4 a month. This podcast is our way of sharing it forward, and we get so much value out of these conversations ourselves, but producing a podcast isn't free.
We have personally invested in podcast equipment and video editing software, as well as dedicate our time to produce, edit, and distribute a new episode every week.
By becoming a podcast supporter, you will help us keep the podcast running smoothly and get access to amazing off-the-record conversations with seasoned artists, authors, art collectors, gallery and museum professionals, as well as industry leaders. These conversations offer even more valuable advice for artists at various stages of their career.
You also get access to our artist community platform and our gratitude for keeping the podcast going. Head on over to levelupartisthub.com to sign up and become a podcast supporter today.
Welcome back, everybody. So let's dive in some of the things to consider when you're choosing your holiday pieces, whatever you're selecting, that will be the focus of your sales push, if you will, during the holiday seasons. So a couple of things. Is it brand or style consistent? If what you paint is non-objective or non-representational, vibrant, abstract, geometric things, how do you tie that in with Christmas? I mean, are you going to do Christmas trees and snow scenes? Like that's completely different from what the way you portray yourself. Doesn't mean there's not an opportunity to do it on the side, but you have to be mindful. How does it all fit together, right? Is it scalable? Are you doing something that takes you so long? And even the thought of making like 50 snow globes, you're just like dreading even the thought, the moment you thought it. Do you even have time for all that? Is it profitable? Like, depends how long each of these things take. Like, and how much the materials cost, and like, does it even make sense? Like, if you bought those little wood slices, I've done that in the past, the little wood slice ornaments, which are absolutely adorable. How much are you going to pay for them, and how far in advance do you have to buy them so you don't get holiday pricing on them later on, which is like 4 times as much? And also, like, timeline of events. Like, will you be doing weekly markets? And if you do well at one market, will you actually have enough time to make a new batch? I'm thinking of like, folks that work in ceramics, especially since that timeline is very stretched out in terms of how long everything takes before it's ready for the next stage. Or are you going to focus on less sales but higher ticket items? Kind of like Jackie mentioned earlier, you could be doing originals or you could be doing products, right? So which one are you going to go for? Like, if you were to say, I'm going to focus on prints, well, that's very easy to make more of, right? Like, the original is already set up, it's rinse and repeat. But if you're going to focus on original paintings, how are you going to do that? Like, are you going to focus on a certain price point or a certain size, or are you actually going to make mini paintings? Like, how are you going to work that out? Yeah, this is the time to kind of work through some of those.
Yeah, and I think that's the best thing, thinking about it now in July or August, because it avoids you having to make maybe in the moment abrupt decisions that in hindsight maybe you would have made different strategic decisions. So you have that time and that calm that is happening right now in the summer. Everyone's relaxing, going on trips, but really think of the strategy first. And especially when thinking about original art or art products, that thing that's a good thing to always think about is, what do you want to be known for as an artist? Of course, there are times where you maybe want to make pieces for a specific market based on a specific theme. Not saying that you have to make that kind of work forever, but think about best case scenario. Perfect market day, beautiful weather, everyone's there, everyone loves your work. What happens if this product, whether it's an original piece of art in a style that may be a little bit different than yours, or a physical product that's reproducible, like prints, like Adriana said, if it takes off, would you be happy about that? Like, will you feel excited just to make more of those pieces? Or be like, well, I feel like maybe this is just a huge distraction from my current style. It's not super fulfilling. Like, of course, money is nice, but that's not nice enough. We all know that feeling. So thinking about those things up front of really, is it in line with what you want to be known for? Is it on brand? Is it profitable and consistent with your larger artistic vision of your career? Which are decisions that can only be made when you have the time and space outside of the holiday season, like right now. Mm-hmm. So once you decide what you're going to be offering during the holiday season, what you're going to be selling either online, in markets, original art products, now's the time that you want to start taking action on it. And as we mentioned before, in our Level Up Artist membership, we have a very detailed timeline with action steps, reverse engineering this process of what you have to do each month, each week, the checklist to follow. So that's all laid out if you decide to join us in our community. But thinking about things like marketing materials and producing these pieces, reverse engineering it ideally so that by the time the holiday season starts, which is really Q4, if you're in corporate world, so October, November at the latest, you want to already have all those things done. Like, imagine that feeling going into October and all of your holiday pieces from an inventory standpoint are already completed, or you have a plan for executing that. You have marketing materials, you have images, you have listings on your website. That's all done. And then quarter 4 is simply implementing that system, sharing your marketing materials that you've already created, really resulting in that super low stress, hopefully, holiday season from a business standpoint, where all you have to do is simply enjoy your events, talk to your audience, talk to future collectors, and enjoy the profits that are coming your way.
Yeah. And one last thing that I want to highlight again, or highlight more, is the idea too of like, if it's so holiday specific, what are you going to do with the extras? Are you going to roll them over to the following year? So let's say you did do a line of paintings. Let's just go with that. That's like snow and cardinals and Christmas trees, right? What are you going to do with all that surplus that you may have after the season? Are you going to reuse them next year? That's not necessarily a bad thing. Let's suppose that does align with the work that you already do. But you definitely want to consider, again, how specific to that holiday do you want it to be? Like, you can't catch me dead, like painting pumpkins. So this is just not going to happen. Like they're adorable. I may buy them, but they don't line up with what I do. So I wouldn't do them. It's too specific to specific holiday and time period and things like that. So that's definitely something to think about, is how specific to it, and can it be used for other seasons or not, or that's pretty much it.
Exactly. And for holiday specific type items like picnic, for example, or pumpkins, for example, or painting images of Christmas trees, that also limits your audience in a sense also. Thinking about, okay, well, they may not change out their decor for the holiday season that much. It may become more limiting, but it could also be super niche. And you know that your target collector, they decorate full out for every holiday season. And so they're going to love the crap out of these Christmas trees that you're building. But it's just a strategic choice that you need to make upfront and figuring out, best case scenario, if you completely sell out, are you okay with it? Worst case scenario, if you do have excess, how will you feel about that? And how will you handle that inventory after the fact?
Yeah. And for those that get like analysis paralysis, my brain goes to, if it's the first time you're doing this, pick something that is not that holiday specific. So maybe you get t-shirts made, or, that like have some of your art on it or some kind of design, or you make ornaments, but they're kind of reflective of what your regular painting style is. They're not that holiday specific. You will have collectors that want whatever you make on anything, like on all the stuff, right? They want the tote bags. They want, like, you could think of it kind of that way. Like, what can you put your artwork on that can be turned into a product, whether original or mass produced, semi-mass produced. But if you're like on the fence of like, you've never done this before, then maybe think of something that you could release this time. And also, doesn't have to be all the things. You pick one thing, by the way. Let's say we pick, a tote. Maybe that's what you do for winter 2023, a tote, but it doesn't mean you can't also highlighted in the spring and in the summer and in the fall. Again, it's not so holiday specific. I mean, it's just a great way to try it out. Anyway, so I just wanted to add that in of like, hey, it doesn't have to be this whole Christmas or whatever holiday it is production. It could just be something that can be rolled over to other seasons and other holidays too. So something to kind of think about. And definitely remember, like, if you prep now when you have all these months, you don't have to stress as much later. I mean, there might be some stress. It's never going to be really stress free, but it'll be much reduced stress. So definitely take the time to do some of that now, and get your test, check all that stuff out, see how it looks, and now you have time to plan out and make tweaks and changes way ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. With that strategy in place too, making sure that as you're entering the holiday season, every action you're then taking is very intentional. But
yeah, absolutely. So with that, we're going to wrap today's episode. And we hope you enjoyed this content and get to take some of these strategies and put them in place.
And happy Christmas in July, everybody. So as always, both of our blogs will be linked in the show notes, where you can find episode notes and links to all of our other podcast episodes.
If you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share your feedback, or have a question you would like to answer for us to answer on the podcast, there we go. You can reach us through social media. I'm at May Art across all platforms.
And I am at J Sanders Studio on all platforms. And if you want to follow the podcast, we are at Level Up Artist on Instagram.
And if you want to check any of the resources that we discussed on this episode, definitely go to levelupartisthub.com to find out more about our business membership, business community, and learn a little bit more about that.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.